Okay, folks, in this one, we're going to talk about the zero product property. So I'm going to title this Zero Product Property. Okay, now this has to do with our 7.4 at the beginning of it. So what we're getting into today is taking the two parts of a polynomial and setting them equal to 0. Now, some of them are already set up as groupings or they're already factored, and then some of them you're going to have to factor. So in this particular one, we are going to have them factored for you. You just have to set the groupings or the products up to 0. So for number 1 in your note packet, we have x times x plus 5. So this is held by multiplication because it says zero product property. So keep in mind the two are multiplication. So what I'm saying is that each one of them are set equal to 0. So I take the first one, that's easy enough, x equals 0. The second one, I am going to set equal to 0, but I have to use the opposite operations to complete this problem. So in order to move this across, the opposite of addition is subtraction. So we subtract it across. So x is going to equal -5. Now, we haven't talked about this, but putting them in order in your solution set is very important. Here's the reason why. When you get into solving these, you're going to need to know what you have, and if they're already in order, it'll keep you from having to look back and forth at what you're going to eliminate. So basically, when you get into the story problems and in quadratics, this is going to be more important, but it's still fairly important. Okay, let's do one more. What I want you to do is number 2, I want you to pause the video. I'll put it up here. And then I want you to write down and see if you can get the answer before you turn this back on and check it. Okay, hopefully you've paused the video by now. So let's walk through. Remember, once again, the first one and the second one are each set equal to 0. So a equals 0 is the first answer. A minus 12 equals 0 is going to become a equals positive 12. So we're going to have 0 and positive 12 as my answer. Now, if you got that one, great. Then we're ready for our next step. So the next step is just putting a number in front of that outside a or x. So for number 3, we're going to have 5p parenthesis p minus 2 equals 0. So what's going to happen is you're going to look at it and treat it the same. We know they're still held by multiplication. So I put that dot there just to remind me. So this whole thing and this is going to be set equal to 0. So 5p equals 0. Well, we know whenever we divide something into 0, it becomes 0. So that 5 right behind that p means nothing. It's just going to get dropped out in the end. And then, of course, the one in the parentheses stays the same. So I'm going to add 2 across. So I'm going to have p equals 2. So your two answers are going to be 0 and 2. Now, number 4 is treated the same. Really, there's not going to be any issue if you think about it like you did on the second half of 1, 2, and 3. So take a minute, pause, and see if you can do number 4. Okay, are we ready? So now we're going to take and set each one equal to 0. So if you set each one equal to 0, all it's going to do is flip the signs. If you haven't noticed that by now, it's going to be a common pattern. So you're going to add 2 across, so c is going to equal 2. You're going to subtract 1 across, so you're going to have -1. So therefore, -1 and positive 2 are your answers for number 4. So now that hopefully you're getting the gist of this, let's throw some other quirky ones in. So far, we haven't had too difficult patterns to follow. So let's look at 5 and 6, because now we're starting to get in some different patterns. So for number 5, we have 2b minus 6, and I have 3b plus 18. And then number 6, we have 3 minus 5s and negative 3 plus 5s. And yes, I wrote them as cursive s's to make that a little easier. Now, I put them both up here so that if you get the pattern, then you can go ahead and get both problems done and then check when you get done. So let's look at number 5. Pretty straightforward. Set each one equal to 0. Now, let's do like we've been doing. First, you're going to add the 6 across. And folks, we did this basic solving at the beginning of the year, so this is not something that's outside of your realm. This is something I hope you feel comfortable with. So this is a 6, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take and divide by 2. So b is equal to 3. So let's look at the second one. I'm going to subtract 18 across and then divide by 3. So this time b equals negative 6. So your answer is negative 6 and positive 3. Now, if you think you got a handle on that, great. Try number 6 and then we'll check back. It is a little quirky, but I promise it's not anything that you can't handle. All right. So we're going to set each one equal to 0. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to go ahead and move the negative 5s across by addition. So 3 equals now positive 5s. We want to get the 5 away from the s, so we're going to divide by the 5. So 3/5 is what s equals. In this one, the 3 is negative, so I'm just going to add that one across. So 5s equals positive 3. And then you are still going to divide by 5. So in this case, you're going to end up with the same answer for both of them. So 3/5 is what our answer is. We only need to write it once. Since they're both positive 3/5, there's no reason to recopy it twice. All right, so our last ones that we're going to talk about are going to be just a little bit of, I don't know, kind of putting it together. So for number 8, it's still going to be the same pattern as 5 and 6. Our only difference is I want to try to show you a shortcut, because I think sometimes that a shortcut is needed to speed up what we already do. And if you don't understand the shortcut, that's fine. Do the same work, you will always get the same outcome. So the shortcut goes like this. Whoever has the variable attached to it is the denominator. So in both of these fractions, the denominator is going to be 3 for this guy and 5 for this guy because they both are attached to the d. So that means the numerator is going to be the other number. So there's a 7 and a 6. Now, to get the correct sign, look at the original grouping. The first grouping is a positive, so it has to be the opposite because we know to solve we'd have to subtract it across. So that one is going to be negative. In this particular one, we would have to add the 6 across. So if we add it across, that means it's going to stay positive. And folks, that's all there is to for this one. So let me give you an extra problem. So try this extra problem out on your paper. Let's see if you can get it before your neighbor. All right, go. All right, are we ready? Okay, so we know that we're going to have a 4 in the denominator and a positive 7 in the numerator for the first one. The second one is going to be a 5 in the denominator and a negative 8 in the numerator. So that means my final answer, I just have to rewrite them so that the negative comes first. Okay, so that's all there is to that. Now, the last problem that I'm wanting to look at just has 3 different factors. And I really want to make sure that we understand this before I turn you loose on your homework assignment and you stumble upon these. So really the only thing you're going to do here is you see that you have 1, 2, 3 groupings. So that means I have to set all 3 of them equal to 0. So you could use the quick thing that I used up above. G equals 0 is pretty straightforward. G equals 0. This here is 6 minus 3g equals 0. Well, we know that we have a negative 3, so we know we have this in the denominator. When we move it across, that's going to make it a positive, so it's going to make it a positive 6. So what's going to happen is 6 over 3 is going to become positive 2. So what this one's going to have over here is going to end up being 6 plus 3g. So I have to subtract the 6 across, so that's a negative 6, and then I'm going to divide it by 3. So that's going to give me a negative 2. So now we have all 3, 1, 2, 3 groupings, 1, 2, 3 answers. However, when you write it in your answer, you have to have the negative, then the 0, and then the 2. And that's it. So if you have any questions, let me know.